Welcome back. Sutra 10. tad-vṛttayaḥ Sūkṣmā. pratiprasava-heyāḥ Sūkṣmā. Reabsorption, reemergence, resolution into respective cause or origin, capable of being reduced or avoided or abolished, subtle. These, the subtle ones, can be reduced by resolving them backward into their origin. In Sutra 10 and Sutra 11, Patanjali gives the general principles of first attenuating the kleśas and finally destroying them. The kleśas can exist in two states, active and potential. In their active state, they can be recognized easily by their outer expressions and the definite awareness which they produce in the mind of the sadhaka. In the case of a person who is in a fit of anger, it is easy to see that dvesha is in full operation. The same person, when he subjects himself to a rigid self-discipline, acquires the capacity to keep himself absolutely calm and without repulsion toward anyone, and thus reduces this klesha to a potential condition. Dvesha has ceased to function, but its germs are still there, and given very favorable conditions, can be made active again. Their power has become potential, but not completely destroyed. The transition from the fully active to the perfectly dormant condition takes place through a number of stages, which have been pointed out in Section 2, Sutra 4. Through the practice of Kriya Yoga, they can be attenuated progressively until they become quite dormant, incapable of being aroused by ordinary stimuli from the external world. But given extraordinary conditions, they can be made active again. So we have to deal with two problems in the complete elimination of the kleśas. First, to reduce them to the inactive or sūkṣma state, and then to destroy even their potential power, totally burn that seed, right? The first is referred to generally as reducing the kleśas to the form of seeds, which under favorable conditions can still have the power to grow into a tree. And the second as scorching the seeds, so that while they may retain the outer form of the seeds, they have really become incapable of germinating and growing into a tree. The problem of reducing the kleśas to the condition of seeds is itself divisible under two subheads, that of reducing the fully active forms to the attenuated forms, Tanū, and then reducing the latter to the extremely inactive condition, Prasupta, from which they cannot be easily roused or roused easily. Since the first of these two problems is the more important and fundamental in its nature, Patanjali has dealt with it first in Sutra 10, which is what we're reading right now. The second problem of reducing the active forms of the kleśas to the partially latent condition, being comparatively easier, is dealt with in Sutra 41 in this section, Section 2. Though in Sadhana, it really precedes the first problem. In Section 2, Sutra 10, the method of reducing the kleśas, which has been attenuated to the dormant stage, has been hinted at. The phraseology used by Patanjali is extremely apt and expressive, but many people find it difficult to understand the meaning of this pregnant sutra. The phrase pratiprasava means involution or reabsorption of effect into cause, or reversing the process of prasava or evolution. If a number of things are derived in a series from a primary thing by a process of evolution, they can all be reduced to the original thing by a counter process of involution, and such a counter process is called pratiprasava. Let us consider the underlying significance of this phrase in the present context. We have seen already that the 5 kleśas mentioned in Section 2, Sutra 3 are not independent of each other, but form a series beginning with avidya and ending with abhinivesha. The process of the development of avidya into its final expression, abhinivesha, is a causal process. One stage naturally and inevitably leading to the next one. It is therefore inevitable that if we want to remove the final element of this fivefold series, we must reverse the process whereby each effect is absorbed in its immediate cause, and the whole series disappears. It is a question of removing all or none. This means that abhinivesha should be traced back to raga-dvesha to asmita, asmita to avidya, and avidya to enlightenment. Okay, so we're tracing back the attraction and aversion to the sense of I-ness, right? The attachment to form and the entanglement with form. And then we're tracing that, the entanglement with form, back to all the separations, right? All the cloaks and veils that have fallen between us in succession, that have taken us away from the truth. And then we're tracing those cloaks and veils, those separating elements, back to enlightenment. This tracing backwards is not merely an intellectual recognition, but a realization which nullifies the power of the kleshas to affect the mind of the yogi. So once you recognize, oh, I'm being, ooh. That's so funny. This realization can come to a certain extent on the physical plane, but is attained in its fullness on the higher planes when the yogi can rise in samadhi to those planes. It will therefore be seen from what has been said above that there is no shortcut to the attenuation and final destruction of the kleshas. It involves the whole technique of yogic discipline. The fact that the subtle forms of kleshas remain in their seed form even after they have been attenuated to the extreme limit is of great significance. It means that the sadhaka is not free from danger until he has crossed the threshold of kaivalya and reached the final goal. As long as these seeds lurk within him, there is no knowing when he may become their victim. And anyone who's been on the path for a while knows how this works. Like, you've seen it happen many times, right? You're like, I thought I got that. I thought I was done with that. It just got me, right? You got triggered. It is these unscorched seeds of kleshas which account for the sudden and unexpected fall of yogis after they have reached great heights of illumination and power. This shows the necessity of exercising the utmost discrimination right up to the very end of the path. When the latent forms of kleshas have been attenuated to the utmost limit, and the resulting tendencies have been made extremely feeble, brought almost to the zero level, this question arises: how to destroy the potentiality of these tendencies so that there may be no possibility of their revival under any circumstances? How to scorch the seeds of kleshas so that they cannot germinate again? This is a very important question for the advanced yogi because his work has not been completed until this has been done. The answer to this question follows from the very nature of the kleshas, which has been discussed previously. If the kleshas are rooted in avidya, they cannot be destroyed until avidya is destroyed. This means that no freedom from the subtlest forms of the kleshas is possible until full enlightenment of kaivalya is attained through the practice of dharma mega samadhi. This conclusion is confirmed by section 4, Sutra 30, according to which freedom from kleshas and karmas is obtained only after dharma mega samadhi, which precedes the attainment of kaivalya. Sutra 11. Dhyāna-heyās, tad-vṛttayaḥ. Dhyāna-heyās, dhyāna-heyās, tad-vṛttayaḥ. It's nice to say that. By meditation, Kleśas which are to be avoided, their modifications, ways of existing, activities. Their active modifications are to be suppressed by meditation. This sutra gives the method of dealing with the kleśas in the preliminary stage, when they have to be reduced from an active to a passive state. The means to be adopted are given in one word, dhyāna. It is therefore necessary to understand the meaning of this word in its full scope. The word dhyāna, of course, literally means meditation or contemplation, as explained elsewhere, but here it obviously stands for a rather comprehensive self-discipline, of which meditation is the pivot. It is easy to see that a sadhaka who is under the dominion of kleśas in their active form will have to attack the problem from many sides at once. In fact, the whole technique of Kriya Yoga will have to be utilized for this purpose, for one of the two objects of Kriya Yoga is to attenuate the kleśas, and the reduction of the kleśas from their active to the passive form is the first step in this attenuation. Svadhyaya, tapas, and Ishvara pranadhana, all the three elements of Kriya Yoga, have therefore to be used in this work. But the essential part of all these three is really dhyāna. The intensive concentration of the mind in order to understand the deeper problems of life and to solve them effectively for the realization of one's main objective. Even tapas, the element of Kriya Yoga, which outwardly seems to involve merely going through certain self-disciplinary and why am I having a hard time with this word? Purificatory practices depends for its effectiveness to a large extent on dhyāna. For it is not the mere external performance of the act which brings about the desired result, but the inner concentration of purpose and the alert mind which underlie the act. If these latter are not present, the outer action will be of no avail. If these latter are not present, the outer action will be of no avail. No success in yoga is possible unless all the energies of the soul are polarized and harnessed for achieving the central purpose. So, the word dhyāna in Sutra 11 implies all mental processes and exercises which may help the sadhaka to reduce the active kleśas to the passive condition. It may include reflection, brooding over the deeper problems of life, changing habits of thought and attitudes by means of meditation, tapas, as well as meditation in the ordinary sense of the term. It is necessary to note in this connection that reducing the kleśas to a latent or passive condition does not mean merely bringing them to a temporary state of quiescence. Violent disturbances of the mind and emotions which result from the activity of the kleśas, klesha-vritti, are not always present, and we all pass through phases in which kleśas like ragadvesha seem to have become latent. A sadhaka may retire for some time into solitude. As long as he is cut off from all kinds of social relationships, raga and dvesha will naturally become inoperative, but that does not mean that he has reduced these to a latent state. It is only their outer expression which has been suspended, and the moment he resumes his social life, these kleśas will reassert themselves with their usual force. Reducing the kleśas to the latent state means making the tendencies so feeble that they are not easily aroused, though they have not yet been rooted out. Another point which may be noted is that attacking one particular form or expression of a klesha is not of much avail, though in the beginning this may be done to gain some knowledge of the working of the kleshas and the technique of mastering them. A klesha can assume innumerable forms of expression, and if we merely suppress one of its expressions, it will assume another form. It is the general tendency which has to be tackled, and it is this isolation, as it were, of this tendency and tackling it as a whole which tests the intelligence of the sadhaka and determines the success of the endeavor. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for now, but let me read Sutra 12. The reservoir of karmas which are rooted in kleshas brings all kinds of experiences in the present and future lives. The seeds are always sprouting, right? Okay. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time.